بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الحمد لله حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا كريم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي رب زدني علما رب زدني علما رب زدني علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. Welcome back to your viewers. This is your brother Abdul Wahab Saleem and we are looking at the Tafsir of Surah al-Hujurat. We're looking at verse number 7. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, or we're continuing on with verse number 7, وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانِ. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made beloved to you belief. Okay? He's made beloved to you belief. وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. And He's also beautified belief for you within your hearts. وَكَرَّهَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you dislike unbelief, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you dislike transgression and disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الرَّاشِدُونَ. Such people are the ones who have been guided to the rashad, that have been guided to the right path. They've been rightly guided. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks now and He makes an exception. And He says that rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the iman beloved to you. So for iman to become beloved to an individual, belief to become beloved to an individual, that is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. Allah alone is the one who can make iman beautiful for a person, right? Oftentimes people ask, and oftentimes people discuss about how we can help somebody else understand, and how we can help that person do this, and how we can help this person do that, and this person do this, and a whole, plethora of things with good intentions. We're trying to help people do something that's good. That's a beautiful intention. But at the end of the day, we have to come to a recognition of the fact that Allah is the only one who can make something beautiful, and Allah is the only one who can make something really, really beloved. And the actions that are dictated by iman, not anyone can take your hand and help make you, force you into doing that. Allah is the one who can make you love this. And if you start to love it, then the feeling that you have when you're conducting certain actions and deeds, it's a whole another feeling. It doesn't feel like a chore anymore. You don't require money for it. Even if you go through pain and patience, you're ready to endure for it. All of that. Why? Because Allah has made it beloved to you. Allah has made guidance beloved to certain people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made iman and actions beloved to certain people. So what we should be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to make this iman beloved to us. And now that it becomes beloved to us, we also need something else as well, right? Iman may be beloved. Certain times people have spiritual enlightenments. Or some people, they end up accepting Islam. And as they're accepting Islam, the reason why they're doing it is iman has been made beautiful. Iman has rather been made beloved to them. They've loved it. They now love it. But for the love to continue, it has to also be beautified, right? You may love something, it is a love that is a temporary love. When you get tired of that, whatever it is that you love, then no longer will you love it anymore. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I've not only made you love iman, I've also done something else for you. I have done tazyeen, beautification of that iman for you. And when I have beautified it, it remains beloved. And that's why people live at times for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and the whole time, 30 years, 40 years, 50, 60, 70 years, sometimes even beyond that, 100 years of their lives, and they are constantly worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with absolute love and dedication and devotion. Why? Because Allah has made it beloved. And in addition to that, they never fall sick of it. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also beautified it. They never get sick of it. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make iman beloved to us, and also beautify that iman and the actions that are dictated by the iman, so that we always are in love with this iman. وَكَرَّهَ إِلَيْكُمْ الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانِ. And Allah has also made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made hateful within you the unbelief, as in disbelieving after a person has become a believer, وَالْفُسُوقَ, and also fusuq, transgression, and and also evil deeds. Sometimes people love iman so much that going back away from this iman is extremely painful for them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that pain is not something that you can get on your own. I've done it for you. I do that for certain people. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الرَّاشِدُونَ. Those are the people who are rightly guided. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues mentioning of His blessings. He says, فَضْلًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَنِعْمَةً. All of this occurred how and why? This occurred because of the fadl of Allah, the grace of Allah, and the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in reality, we can't do anything within our lives that is positive, even if we know it to be positive, except with the grace of Allah. And that's why a poet says that إِذَا لَمْ يَكُنْ عَوْنٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِلْفَتَى فَأَوَّلُ مَا يَجْنِي عَلَيْهِ اجْتِهَادُهُ. If there wasn't to be divine aid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for an individual, then the first thing that will go wrong is his own efforts. He'll try. We try to do certain things. You know, there may be good things we're trying to do within our lives. For some of us, it's waking up for Fajr. For some of us, it's praying the Sunnah of Fajr. For some of us, it's giving da'wah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Others want to go and seek knowledge. Others want to just get married so they can adopt a chaste lifestyle and so on and so forth. And it's just not working out. Why? Because we take all the means and forget that at the end of the day, all of this is going to be فَضْلًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَنِعْمَةً. It will be grace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and blessing. And it won't be from ourselves. No matter what means we've taken, it will not be from ourselves. Things will just start to go wrong. Things will start to fall apart. Things will not add up. The stars will not line up. But if the fadl of Allah comes along, if the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes along, even if things seem crooked, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make everything fall into place. فَضْلًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَنِعْمَةً. Grace from Allah and also blessing. وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever knowing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever wise. Now we get to a very, very important point within the surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ من المؤمنين قتتلوا فأصلحوا بينهما فإن بغت إحداهما على الأخرى فقاتلوا التي تبغي حتى تفيء إلى أمر الله فإن فاءت فأصلحوا بينهما بالعدل وأقسطوا إن الله يحب المقسطين. This verse, by the way, it's not only a very powerful verse, it's a verse of the day. This is a verse that we need to understand and comprehend and implement within our lives today, to understand how to deal with the developments that are unfolding very fast in modern society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if two groups of the believers, they end up getting into a fight, فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. Then your job, O believers that are still have their brains and that haven't gotten into the messy quarrels and they haven't started bickering, your job is to start reforming and not siding with one person and the other. Your job is to try to help people come to common terms. Your job is to try to bring things together and not bring things further apart. Your job is always to try to bring unity within this ummah. Your job is to provide solutions. Your job is to provide exit routes for people that have made mistakes. فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. Then reform between these two groups that might have gotten into a fight. فَإِن بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا عَلَى الْأُخْرَى. Now you're trying to reform. You're trying to devise a solution. You're trying to be positive, but one of them continues to transgress over the other. Then we know that this is the one who is transgressing. فَإِن بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا. You're solving. They continue to transgress. You've got two groups. One of them says, okay, you want to provide a solution, I'm ready to accept it. The other one says, no solutions. The only thing that I'm up for is fight, right? So now you know that there is a transgressor from amongst them. That is the group that has went wrong. فَإِن بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا عَلَى الْأُخْرَى فَقَاتِلُوا الَّتِي تَبْغِي حَتَّى تَفِيءَ إِلَى أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. Then what do? You join forces to help this group that is being transgressed upon to find a solution, even if that means to take matters into your own hand. You find a solution. Why? Because when they realize that the solution is going to be found and the ummah will all unite in order for them to find the solution, they will stop becoming transgressors, because they cannot go and combat the entire ummah altogether. When the ummah stands together on one front, when we stand together on one issue, and we say that we are going to be united at this front, and if there's little small group of people that are doing something that is messy, and we're ready to stand up for justice in front of all of these people that are this small fringe group that is trying to mess things up, then those groups will slowly start to fall apart because they won't find it within themselves to combat this entire ummah of 1.6 billion people or 1 billion people, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the solution is unity, coming together and unify and remain unified until حَتَّى تَفِيءَ إِلَىٰ أَمْرِ اللَّهِ, until those that have disunited, they start coming back to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِنْ فَاءَتْ, and now when they come back, then what's the solution when they come back? فَأَصْلِحُوا, then you should reform because they've made a mistake and they've accepted the fact that they've made a mistake. Now what do? You reform. You try to fix things up for them. You try to patch things up for them. You try to address things on a theological front. You try to address things on a political front in a positive manner such that you correct and you don't further corrupt. فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا بِالْعَدْلِ, then you find a solution between them with justice. Okay, one went wrong, that doesn't mean we start to go wrong as well. We should still maintain the balance of justice. وَأَقْسِطُوا, and remain just. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those people that always remain just. Even if someone is doing injustice to you, they're being unjust towards you, that doesn't mean you start becoming unjust. You remain just the whole time. Even if the other party is not being just with you, you remain just by the leave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now Allah is going to talk about how you maintain that justice and how you ensure that justice remains within the ummah. Allah says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ, you maintain that justice by recognition of the fact that you are all brothers. This verse, by the way, is an extremely powerful verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed all believers are brothers. Think with me and ponder with me at this verse for a moment. Allah is saying, indeed, and He brings the word innama, which basically means an emphasis and an exclusion of any other possibilities. So indeed, believers are brothers and they're nothing else. Nobody can come and tell you something else now. Some people will say, well, no, believers are brothers except this group and this one and that one and this one and that one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, anyone that falls within musamma al-iman, anyone that falls within this name of iman, which is not something that is inherited by one group and that group just believes themselves to be the only truthful heir of this particular title. No, this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to anyone who says, I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the only Lord, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His messenger. This is a title that Allah has given to such people. So all of such people will be brothers. Ikhwatun, they are brothers. And the reason why I say all of such people is because the word al-mu'minun is a plural. And in usul al-fiqh, in the sciences of fiqh, they say that the word alif lam, which basically makes a word definite, attached to plural, that shows us generality. That means every single person that falls within the title of belief, they are our brothers. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Indeed, every single person that has this title of iman, then they are our brothers. And notice that the word akh, brother, has multiple plurals within the Arabic language. We have the word ikhwan. We have the word ikhwa. We have the word ukhun. And we have other plurals of the word akh, brother. But the plural that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses for the brotherhood that He's describing between me and you, my dear brother and my dear sister, is a special type of plural. And that is the plurality that's normally used for blood brothers, right? If you have a blood brother, you'll say, and you're 4 or 5 blood brothers, you'll say, nahnu ikhwa, we are blood brothers. Right? And if you're just brothers in the masjid or sisters in the masjid, you would say, ikhwan, we're brothers. It's a type of brotherhood as well, but it's not as intimate as the type of brotherhood that is enjoyed by people who are actually blood brothers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this over here metaphorically to describe the type of brotherhood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes from the believers towards other believers. He says, indeed, believers are, and every single one of them, and no exclusions to that rule, no exceptions to that rule, right? Every single one of the believers are brothers, just like blood brothers enjoy that brotherhood and relationship. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. How powerful is this verse? And then despite the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, indeed, all believers, without any exceptions, are brothers, such that their brotherhood should be like blood brothers, we still try to disunite. The reason why I bring this blood brotherhood aspect into the picture is because I want you to think for a moment. If your blood brother was to make a mistake against you on a certain front, if your blood brother was to have a different sort of theological inclination than yourself, then how much leniency would you grant this blood brother of yours? And how much leniency would you grant this blood brother of yours? Why? Considering the fact that he is still within the realm of your ties of kin, and you have to uphold that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that that type of leniency that you give to your blood brother, with the merit that he is your blood brother, Allah wants you to give that to every believer, because you are all like blood brothers. That is the type of brotherhood that Allah has established for us, and there are no other possibilities. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. And then, since you are all brothers, فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. Then your duty is to solve the problems between your brothers. We shouldn't be proponents of disunity within the ummah. We should be proponents of unity. We shouldn't be proponents of causing problems within this ummah. We should be bringing the solutions. And we should be devising the solutions. فَأَصْلِحُوا. Then all of you all together, O Muslims, you, and the commandment is not to one person, أَصْلِحُوا, to all of us. We are commanded as an ummah to do islah. We are commanded as an ummah to reform. So if you see problems between your brothers, it's not something that you can do, you have to do it. You see at the masjid two brothers, two sisters fighting and bickering and quarreling, you just walk the other way. No. That's not what a believer does. Your belief will dictate the fact that you walk up to them and say, brother, sister, I know there's problems, but remember, you're still brothers. I know there's problems, but inshallah we can talk it out. I know there's problems. It is your duty to do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it a duty of every believer to bring reform within this ummah. فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. So bring solutions between your brothers. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. And fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Sometimes we hide behind a lot of different slogans. Sometimes we say, well, the religion has dictated to us for us to outcast this particular group and for us to literally exile, from even our lands at times, this particular ideology and so on and so forth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. You're going to use different slogans to try to justify the evils that you do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, fear Allah, I'm watching. I've described to you in a very beautiful manner the type of brotherhood you're supposed to have within the Muslims. And if you still don't do it, then fear Allah, Allah is watching. And if you fear Allah, then what's going to happen? لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Maybe you'll get the rahmah of Allah. Because the rights of the brothers are not just, oh, we're brothers. The rights of the brothers are beyond that. You see, when you have ties of kin with somebody, if the person is on the street, you bring them back into an apartment. If the person is hungry, you feed them. If that's the kin, if that's your true brother. If the person is stuck somewhere at the airport far away and you drive an hour, you stop working. You take the day off, all of that for the sake of your blood brother. If you don't end up doing this, then you haven't actually fulfilled the true rights, but at least don't become divisive. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ. Maybe you might get some of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask Allah to grant us His mercy. By Allah, we are living in a time where the proponents of disunity have become many. And we're living in a time where the people who call to unity are but a few. And of old, in the past, many of our scholars had called this call of unity within the ummah, such as Imam al-Baji, who went around the Andalusian area, Muslim Spain, for 30 entire years before the fall of Muslim Spain, calling people to unity, calling people to unite, because the fall of Muslim Spain occurred. Why? Because people weren't united. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to unite. In fact, we hear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us to unite in another verse when Allah says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Come together with the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all together. And this is a very powerful verse as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا. You see, i'tisam, coming together with this word i'tisam, is unique in that asama means to protect. And Allah says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا, seek your protection. So when you're coming together, in reality, you're gaining protection. When you're united, you're what? You're protected, because people recognize that as a united ummah, there's power within the ummah. وَاعْتَصِمُوا, so seek your protection within this i'tisam, within this unity. بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ, with the rope of Allah. You see, rope of Allah signifies a lot of things. Number one, the rope, any rope, it's made of threads. If you take a thread and you take another thread and you take a third thread and then you take a fourth thread and you continue to add hundreds of threads together and you wrap them up in this unique way that a rope is made, and now you try to rip this, you're not going to be able to do that. But if you take the one thread of the rope out of it and then you try to rip it, it will rip right apart. And then if you take another thread and put them together, it will become a little bit more difficult. And as you keep growing the numbers of thread, what happens now? You can't even do anything to the rope. Not even one thread is ripping. Right? So the word habl, the rope of Allah, is signifying this unity, this type of unity. Hablullah. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Gather together around the rope or with the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala altogether. And then also the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unique in that the rope is used to help one another. If somebody is falling in quicksand, you throw them a rope, you can pull them right out. Somebody is drowning in water, you throw them a rope, they'll grab it, they'll come right out. You're falling somewhere, someone else can give you a rope and you can come out. And the rope is also used in climbing. So if you're trying to climb within the ranks of the nations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that will happen if you grab hold to my rope. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. All of these meanings are over here. And then if you still don't get it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says جَمِيعًا, all together. There shouldn't be even one proponent of disunity within this ummah. Everybody should be coming together. And for some people, all of this is not going to make sense. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And if you are just going to sit around, and make a lot of different claims, then let me tell you something else. It's not only about uniting, it's also about not disuniting. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And don't disunite this ummah. Stay united, because united we are strong and divided we fall. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to practice, to convey. Jazakumullahu khairan for listening, and join me on the subsequent episodes. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.